on the European standards of good governance for the training of specialists on public governance and administration. First of all, welcome everyone. Greetings on the holiday. Thank you very much for joining us. We have many online participants and we have many offline participants. My name is Andriy Zabolotny, Director of Center of Political and Legal Reforms. I have the honor to moderate this event and be present here in the walls of the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. In the case of air raid, we can go to floor -1. There is a shelter there and everything is equipped to continue our work. We have many representatives of higher education. And they are training, the higher education institutions are training the institutions of all types of property. We have deans of departments. And they are online. Greetings to colleagues who are here present and who are online. And as organizers, we set the task so that everybody present here could get a lot of information about the training process, educational process for the future specialists whom we're training. And we will have a lot of resources from our online partners, and we will send the presentations to online participants as well. Before we start this international forum, I would like to thank our defenders who are defending Ukraine in the battlefield, and remember the heroic deeds of those who lost their lives to the cause. Thanks to them, we have the opportunity to host this event, a minute of silence for the deceased.
Дякую.
Thank you.
У залі музею Наукма, де ми зараз знаходимося, як ви
In the
бачите,
museum hall of the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, there are portraits of the founder of the academy, Kyiv-Mohyla, Filip Orlik, Petro Sagaidachny, and other state builders who were protecting the religion were protecting our statehood, and their contribution since the 18th century was influencing the European educational institutions. A good example that we could start with, this is the tradition of the oath of the rector of the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, and it is similar to the state to the oath of the states, of the public officials. We had to have the president of the University of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy present here, but he could not be here. And we have the director of scientific sciences and this will be Vladimir Venger. He is in Oxford now, and this will enable us to see whether this Kyiv-Mohyla Academy's creativity can be reflected in this practical event. And Volodymyr, can you hear us? Can you see us? Greetings. I hope you can hear me and see me. Thank you. We can see you. The floor is yours. Thank you, dear friends. It's a great honor for me to welcome you on behalf of the National University Kyiv-Mohyla Academy in the walls of our university, the cradle of the Ukrainian higher education. And I'm not afraid of this word. Along with other powerful institutions, we can share this legacy. But without Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, higher education in Ukraine would not develop in the same way. This year, we will celebrate the 410th anniversary of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy's foundation. And this is a cornerstone event, re-establishment of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy in 1991 after it was closed. In the Soviet, after the previously Soviet institution was closed here, enabled the establishment of elements of Bologna process to introduce two working languages in Ukraine. Ukrainian and English have zero tolerance to corruption and plagiarism. Just yesterday, the Commission has finished the work. We are we're drafting the orders, and we will be removing the students from the student lists because of plagiarism, even for a small piece of plagiarism in their work. We are trying to be the platform for the new changes in Ukraine. We're trying to help the colleagues develop themselves. Given that, and under the conditions of war, the support of our international partners is particularly important, and I'd like to thank all of our guests who are now in this building. I would like to thank the representatives of public authorities, other authorities who have joined us here. As to the subject matter of this issue, public things that are stipulated in this work. Obviously, the key task for the governance, for the public governance, for public service, is moving away from the Soviet and post-Soviet thinking, excessive paternalism, excessive dependence on the formal Soviet positivism, formalistic, excessive regulation of economy, planned economy, and other things. Given that, we're trying to review not only the education and educational standards altogether in Ukraine, all schools that are working on public governance. We're not only trying to review that, but also to reintroduce new components and introduce new components. The experience of Sigma and other partners is, of course, extremely important. We're happy to share our outputs. We developed the programs of professional development where civil servants can increase their qualification within master's programs. We will be happy to share that experience. We're actively working to develop English language, and the English language for public authority, for civil servants, is very serious, and we are ready to invite the representatives of other universities to this work. And lastly, probably it should be the first, is science. Just a few weeks later, we're starting a new interesting program, applied research program, which will enable the students, together with theorists and practitioners, to perform applied academic research, which will be funded by the Ukrainian business. This is a pretty important element in the history of our school and in the history of higher education in Ukraine, and we have to change that. A number of overseas companies will be involved. We have the first partners from Poland, from the United States, and that's not just businesses, it's also universities. And they gave preliminary permission. Georgetown University has enabled us to do so. I'm having preliminary negotiations with Oxford University, and we will work with Central European University in Vienna and Jagiellonian University in Krakow.
So every university can join the educational component of development of English in the sphere of management for representatives of government, public servants, or any additional research. So please contact us. I hope that the forum will be the beginning of something interesting and new.
To make it easier, I'm really honored to have you at this really, I can say, historical place. I'm not sure you had a chance to get deeper in our basement, but it's a special place and breadth of Ukrainian higher education and Ukrainian, I can say, spirit, because our university and our educational programs have been developed under the pressure of Ukrainian authorities for ages. Kyiv-Mohyla Academy is a source of Ukrainian leaders, Ukrainian oppositional leaders for all authorities. And I suppose it's a great opportunity in wartime to present our strengths, to present our opportunities for further development. Because very often when I'm talking about this abroad, I'm asked, what kind of challenges are you facing under the pressure of wartime? So from this perspective, my key message for all international partners that we are not victims, we don't need any condolences, we are fighters, we are strong enough, and educational front is another front line for us, and we are trying to be here as strong as our military on the real front line. Thank you so much for your support, and I hope we will develop further activities. And on behalf of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, I can invite you for bringing any ideas and fresh, I can say, dreams for Ukrainian public service. Thank you so much, and welcome to Kyiv-Mohyla.
Дякую вам. Дякую.
Thank you to Kyiv-Mohyla Academy for the opportunity to be here and to co-organize this international forum, and thank you, Volodymyr, for insights from best universities of the world where you are often visiting. And let's proceed. So we have to speed up a little bit, so we are glad to give the floor to Olena Shulyak, member of Ukrainian Parliament, head of the Committee on Government, Self-Government and City Building. So please. Good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning to international partners, lecturers, students, experts. First of all, I would like to start with gratitude and thank experts of Center of Policy and Legal Reform for organization of today's forum, and to Kyiv-Mohyla Academy where this event is hosted, and thanks for the discussion of important things for Ukraine. And I would like to say that Center of Policy and Legal Reform has been partner of this parliament for more than 6 years, and we can always use your expertise, your ideas, which are always useful for our committee. To be frank, because of our activity, we often meet students, youth, and discuss various questions, starting from state youth policy and ending with implementation of democracy tools, especially in the sphere of reconstruction. And I would like to say that at every meeting, we are asked how youth can participate in processes dealing with public governance. And the answer for that question is simple and difficult at the same time. First of all, for us today, for the state, it's extremely important to have qualified specialists with good education who will participate not only in post-war reconstruction, but they are needed right now. And preparation of such specialists must be in the focus of attention of our states. I frankly believe that the specialty which is introduced in various universities and is called public governance and administration will be definitely useful in preparation of specialists who will implement plans of government, strategies, and development programs. So we will use strong institutions. They will work on reconstruction projects, dealing with schools, kindergartens, and everything which Ukrainians expect. And the second side of this question is as following. We all want the selection of public servants to be transparent. The Ukrainian parliament had to adopt the law according to which the selection competitive processes are paused for wartime, but we clearly state that we should adopt a new law which will return the competitions again. But this law will not just return this competitive process, it should cover all the gaps in legislation which were present before 2022, and we should find possible improvements for this procedure. We should close all the loopholes and at the same time add new conditions for such competitions and add opportunities for career growth and all the things which are necessary according to new procedures of selection to this public service. In Verkhovna Rada and with cooperation with our international partners, and I express my gratitude to OECD and Sigma. They helped us to adopt new legislation on local self-government, and before this procedure, this was not regulated. We also adopted law which is to be signed by the president and which deals with the classification of positions and allows for fair and transparent wages in the public service. So, dear international partners, thank you very much for being together with us on this Euro integration path. And I would also like to say that our committee is open for ideas, proposals. We are ready to consider all proposals to find best practices, and I wish participants of today's forum a fruitful work and glory to Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Olena. And we see some bright moments in your speech for students who are expecting this competitive procedure, because we believe that they are quite competitive after this education and they will win this selection processes. And to implement this state policy, the role of government is crucial. And I give the floor to Alexander Yarema, State Secretary of Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, who has great experience in youth policy. Thank you, Andriy. Thank you, colleagues. It's a great pleasure to be here in this audience, and I understand that a lot of people joined us online. And coming back to your words that students are expecting, I recommend you not to wait, but try and find all the opportunities to join the civil service, to learn more about public service, and make first steps in a career there. Of course, we have certain obligations in our Euro integration path. We are expecting this competitive selection procedures to start. We actively work in this sphere. So if we speak about the topic of today's forum, I would like to say that during recent decades, we have passed a long path, because when I graduated from Academy of Public Administration, there was a different subject, and now we speak about public governance and management. So there is no doubt that Ukraine is part of Europe, and we are actively integrating into EU and European community, and it's important to comply with all the criteria and standards on which European community is based, especially in part of good governance. And we, as a community of public servants, colleagues from NGOs, we prepared certain documents which were adopted by government, like roadmap of government reform, on some documents on functioning of state institutions, and also documents dealing with other spheres. And the adoption of such documents and the process of this adoption proves the good practices of cooperation of government and civil society. We already have good tools in this sphere, like Open Government Initiative, when we started a new format of co-creation, and in this initiative we see representative of public bodies, representatives of civil society, who together work on ideas. And it's clear that European standards are key for us in our reform process. We understand that the biggest challenge for Ukraine today is defense, fighting aggressor, but there are also a lot of other challenges, especially in the sphere of European integration, reforms in various spheres. And for us, it's absolutely important to build the state system. It already suffered a lot and had a lot of challenges, but when we speak with our colleagues, they often express the positive views on our system, because during this full-scale invasion, but we remember that war started even before, but still we keep control, the state system works, and at the same time we conduct reforms. These standards, European standards to which we move and which are our goal, like the rule of law, engagement of citizens in decision-making, transparency, efficiency, effectiveness are important even to be included in the education, so that even during PhD studies, undergraduate studies, students understand and base their work on best standards and best practices. It's obvious for us that to integrate these standards in education system, and we heard the speech of the dean, we have lots of universities who actively work on this, and we should take into account several areas like development of academic programs and involvement of young people to internship in public bodies like we have in the Secretariat of Cabinet of Ministers, when we work with partners from different organizations and are going to integrate such interns. And it also could be done in bodies of central government. So in such case, students during their studies can participate already in work of public bodies, so they can choose their points of interests, what to study, where to focus, and for government bodies, it's important that students graduating from universities will be able to bring maybe some new vision, some academic approaches. So we as Ukrainian government and colleagues from other countries face new global challenges like interaction with AI, how it will influence decision making, how it will be participating in new ideas generation. So that's a great opportunity to speak more with students about that, to practice something, to model something, because it's definitely already exists in Ukrainian government. We have lots of digital tools, and that's what is interesting, that this experience is interesting for our colleagues from around the world. And it's also important to model everything and plan everything to avoid some bad decisions or not successful decisions. For us, international dimension is very important. That's a great opportunity to for integration, because when we speak about integration, that's not only state level but multi-layered process. So it's great when we have communication and integration in academic community, where joint teams are created working on certain topics. That's why international dimension is very important for us. And we also pay great attention in our work and life, not only to hard skills, but also to soft skills like teamwork, critical thinking, leadership, responsibility, and that's also an important dimension which can be mastered during studies, working with youth initiatives, during internship, working with colleagues from state bodies and local self-government. So in such case, I am sure that in such cooperation, we'll be able to foster a new generation of managers who will help Ukraine become a part of European community and be a part of this community in future to work for our best interests. So that's the continuous process. We don't have one point where we come and then stop. It's a process. So that's important for young people to know how different tools, programs, organizations work, so that these young people will be able to present Ukraine on this level. So thank you for organization of this forum and for the invitation, and I wish you fruitful work. Thank you, Alexander, for your speech, for emphasizing practical approaches and involvement of students, and for your constant cooperation with civil society and universities. So this week we saw the conference which dealt with the curricula formation, double diplomas, and many more. So I give the floor to Yelizaveta Artemenko, representative of Ministry of Education and Science. So good morning. I'm grateful for the opportunity to underline the urgency of this sphere of education. And I can definitely say that recently we realized that our legislation is not ready for martial law, and we see the huge amount of work in Euro integration sphere.
You cannot imagine how nice it is to work with a person who has a lot of questions, and you don't even think about them, because that's the way you learned once upon a time. Our country is facing new challenges every day, and we have to progress all the time. We have developed. Things are not working the way they used to work in the past. So the relevance of development, the new blood in the civil service is extremely important. And I can tell that as a person who is looking for new employees all the time in her unit. This is super important, but this is super accessible and available and super interesting. And when you work for the state, you have the feeling that the process is ongoing, but you can feel the results of your work over time. And when you understand that you made a little contribution into the big machine, and you know that this is your contribution, and you're going home and you say, Mom, my first resolution that I wrote personally was adopted. So this is extremely interesting. Come to us, join us, study with us. We're always open. The ministry is always open. We are open for communication with young people, not very young people. And each of you in your soul knows a little bit better than others how to live in Ukraine well. And then we can generate something good and new together. Thank you. Thank you, Elizaveta. That's a very inspiring statement. And thank you for the invitation to work at the Ministry after line education. And even here in the Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, they're called faculties, and there are also line departments. So you can imagine the kind of combination of knowledge, public governance and law. That would be super experts. And good governance specialists would not be so serious without the support of international partners. And Sigma program is a key partner. It's the institution that helps adhere to principles of good governance as guidelines for dynamic European integration. So I'd like to give floor to Mr. Gregor Virant, OECD Sigma. Mr. Virant, please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Andriy. Dear colleagues, good morning. Thank you for this invitation. I'm very glad to be here with you today. I would like to thank you for good cooperation. I'd like to thank the Center, Mr. Zabolotny, Mr. Kolyushko, Mr. Sayenko, and particular thanks to Ms. Shulyak and Mr. Yarema.
Good morning also in English. Thank you for the invitation. I think it's important to spread the word, the gospel of good public administration also in the academia world. I have read in the note that you prepared for this forum that the forum is aimed at creating a platform for communication between like-minded colleagues. And since we are like-minded colleagues, I'm sure we all agree that good public administration, good public governance matters. The main factor of success of a country, of prosperity of a country, is not its access to natural resources and other riches, to oil, to diamonds, and so on. It is how society is organized. It is how public policies are designed and implemented. It is how corruption is thwarted, and how effectively and impartially legal disputes are adjudicated. Quality of public administration as the machinery that supports the government in creating public policies, but also implements those policies and delivers services to citizens and businesses, is considered to be one of the main factors of competitiveness and therefore of prosperity of a country. And for Ukraine, good public administration is also critical for effective recovery and for smooth accession to the EU. Namely, without good public administration, it is impossible to efficiently harmonize all legislation with the EU and then also to implement it. Because don't forget that the EU does not have bodies and agencies and institutions to implement the European law. It's the member states that implement the European law. It's the national administrations and national judiciaries that do it. And it's also important to have good public administration once you are a member, because it makes much easier for you to harness all the benefits of membership, including all the funds that are available, and also to effectively take part in the decision-making processes. Because once you are in the family, once you are a member, you are not just a recipient of the decisions, you are a co-maker of the decisions. And this is all why public administration reform is one of the fundamentals, so-called fundamentals of the EU enlargement. And it is dealt with in terms of negotiations in the so-called cluster of fundamentals, which opens first and closes last. So these are the most important issues. Democracy, rule of law, human rights, and good public administration. Now, I'm using this expression, good public administration, but what does it actually mean? What is good public administration? How do we know if a public administration is good or bad? And also, what does it mean to harmonize public administration with European standards? In many other policy areas, this is not a difficult question. Because you have the so-called acquis communautaire. You have the directives, you have the regulations of the European Union, and there you can see exactly what the European standards are. In the area of public administration, performance, all these horizontal aspects of public administration, there is very little acquis. There is acquis on some aspects, like public procurement, digital services, data protection, open data, and so on. But for a vast majority of issues, there's no formal acquis. And this is why a framework was created to guide the candidate countries in their public administration reforms. And it is called the Principles of Public Administration. This framework was drafted by Sigma. It was approved by the European Commission and also by the OECD Public Governance Committee. So it is a joint framework of the OECD and the EU, of the EU and the OECD. Now, this needs a bit of background. What actually is Sigma, where I'm coming from, and how come that the OECD and the EU have started this collaboration in the area of public administration reform? So Sigma is a joint program of the OECD and the EU, which started a long time ago, back in 1992. So it's more than 30 years. At that time, the European Commission decided to partner with the OECD on the issue of supporting public administration reforms in the candidate countries, in the enlargement countries. Why did the Commission do that? Well, because the OECD is very well positioned to set and to articulate policy standards. This is actually one of the OECD's main missions. And my colleague Arnaud will talk you through that in more details later. And also, you know, the OECD and the EU have a lot in common. There's a shared membership. 22 out of 38 OECD members are also member states of the EU, or from the other angle around, 22 out of 27 EU members are also members of the OECD. These are two organizations which really share values. They are based on the same values. Sometimes we call them the values of the free world, although some people don't like this expression. I personally like it very much. It's the values of democracy, the value of individual liberty, the value of rule of law, protection of human rights, and free market economy. So a lot of shared values and very similar views in all policy areas, including on public governance. And this is why the European Commission decided to establish this strategic partnership, which has worked very, very well since then. So we as Sigma, we are organizationally a part of the OECD, but we are also an instrument of the European Union. This is our we have two hats in a way on our head. The principles of public administration were born in 2014. The Commission asked the OECD to develop jointly a framework of standards of good public administration. They were renewed just 2 years ago in 2023. And in my opinion, and I will not be modest here, they are the answer to the question, what is good public administration? They cover 6 areas. And again, my colleague Martins, who is physically with you today, will talk about that later. They cover 6 areas. There are 32 principles. There are 270 sub-principles. And then there is also a very thorough assessment methodology, which makes it possible for us to come to a country and perform an assessment, as we call it, an evaluation of performance of public administration. And we did it in Ukraine just some time ago in 2023. So Sigma conducts these assessments. We draft regional studies. We also assist countries bilaterally. And Sigma has worked with the accession countries since 1992. So Sigma accompanied the countries that joined the European Union in 2004. Poland, the Baltic countries, Czech Republic, Slovakia, and so on. Now, currently, we work with the candidate countries in the Western Balkans and also in the Eastern Partnership. And here, of course, in recent years, the dynamics has changed radically because now we have 3 candidate countries in the Eastern Partnership, Ukraine, Moldova, and Georgia. Problems with Georgia, we all know, so the process has been frozen for the time being. But Ukraine and Moldova are serious good candidates for EU membership. We built long-term partnership in countries, long-term partnerships. In Ukraine, we have had excellent partnership with many institutions. We in Sigma are practitioners, and our role is to explain to the countries, to the authorities, to the governments, to the ministries, to the institutions, the standards and the values, which are EU and OECD values. Of course, to those countries who believe that these are good values and good standards. We don't want to impose those standards on anyone. And our role is also to help the countries to find the ways how to achieve those standards and those values. Because there are many ways. There are many EU member states, there are many OECD members, and each country has its own way to get to good public administration. And I can tell you from experience that copy-paste doesn't work. So you cannot just take the Irish or the Finnish or the Estonian or the German model and copy-paste it to Ukraine. It is important that the country itself, the government, the democratically elected parliament of the country decides on the model of public administration for a country. We are there for you to help you, to support you, to provide you with good practices, with information, with experience from other countries. But finally, the decision is yours. And the most important thing is that when you make a decision and when you implement a solution for your public administration, it is yours. You must believe in it, because only if you believe in it, you will also be able to implement it properly. I would just like to say at the end, I would of course like to thank all the institutions we have worked so well with, especially the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers, with Mr. Yarema, Mr. Wojtowicz. We have been working with the National Agency for Civil Servants, with the Ministry of Justice, with the Ministry of Digital Transformation, excellent cooperation with the Verkhovna Rada, with the Ministry of Finance and other institutions. And I want to say to all of you, to students, to all colleagues from the academia, that public administration is not boring. It is interesting. It is exciting. It is not boring at all. I would like to encourage you all to delve into this interesting world of public administration through your studies and later through your careers, through your practical work. And I guarantee it will be an interesting journey. I have been a part of public administration reform in my country and then in many other countries. My country would join the European Union in 2004. And I have spent my whole career on issues of public administration as practitioner in government, as government minister, as consultant, as professor, now as international civil servant. And I can say I have never regretted it. It is a really exciting journey. І на кінці я хотів би подякувати вам і побажати вам
I would like to thank you, to wish you peace, fair and sustainable peace. Thank you very much.
Грегоре, дуже дякуємо вам і всій команді Sigma.
Thank you very much, Gregor.
Дуже справді вийшов надихаючий
And
виступ
thanks to all
від
the
вас,
Sigma
і
team.
в ньому пролунали слова про те, що ви
And
вірите, що
thank
Україна знайде
you
добрі рішення для належного врядування.
for
Разом з
saying
цим,
that
але з вашою
Ukraine will
підтримкою. Тому
independently
ми
find
вдячні
its
за
own
багаторічну
ways towards
співпрацю
good
і
governance, what with
сподіваємося,
your
все
support.
продовжимо, щоб
We're
такі
grateful for
рішення
many years of
були добрими для
cooperation,
наших громадян.
and we hope to develop
Далі до
solutions
слова
that
ми
will work
запрошуємо
well for
пана
our
Арно
citizens.
Пете, керівника
And
напряму
next
ефективність належного
floor goes to
врядування
Mr. Arno
європейської
Pete,
країни,
for
директорату
from the Directorate of Public
публічного
Governance of
співробітництва і розвитку.
OECD.
Пан Пете
Please,
має презентацію,
Mr.
у
Pete
якій
has a
це одна з 4
presentation,
наших презентацій
and it's one
сьогодні,
of our
і
4
у ній
presentations,
одразу будуть окреслені напрями
and it will
діяльності
outline
та
the
можливості
key
для України.
areas of
Прошу вас
OECD
до слова.
work and the opportunities for Ukraine. Please, Arno, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me well. Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very pleased to be with you and these very distinguished panelists. I can see Mr. Yarema and a number of prominent colleagues. So my name is Arno Prete, also from the OECD, and I've been given the tasks to summarize 75 years of history of the OECD into less than 7.5 minutes. But I think I'll try to keep concise. I think the most important for our discussion today is the fact that you understand that the OECD's main task is precisely to develop collectively agreed standards, to support their implementation and adoption by member and non-member countries, and also to share experiences. I don't know if you can hear me well and see the slides. The OECD is an international organization, again, with 75 years of history, as I said, 38 member countries. You can go to the next slide. And again, you don't need to know all these figures by heart. I think the most important is really that at the core of our work, as I said, is really this setting standards and providing a lot of advice to countries. And we have more than 450 international standards on many, many different topics. We are based in Paris, but we are also providing forums, support, discussions, networks across the world. Among these standards, and I will go to the next slide, there are public governance standards, which are the most important for the conversation today. I think my colleague Rigor already promoted very eloquently public administration work. And I want to tell you that the OECD is working on all the different topics that you can see here and has developed standards on virtually all of them. It means that we have standards for public governance on public employment, on digital government, public services, and a lot of other topics. We believe these standards give, I would say, an objective for countries to reform, and particularly to reform their government and their public administration practices. They are usually agreed with all member countries and partner countries as a common objective. I'd like to make these standards a bit more practical, and maybe moving to the next slide, to show you a recent that these standards can be and can attach really a number of topics. So on the one hand, what we do is we also develop frameworks, and you can see on the left an example of these frameworks that is a comprehensive framework for public governance that looks at budget, regulations, monitoring and evaluation, public services, and that really underpins usually our work and reviews. But perhaps more interestingly for a conversation today, what you can see on the right side is a series of recommendations and legal instruments. As I say, they are good governance standards, very focused, very specialized. And I'd like to say again that the Sigma principles of public administration really give a very strong foundation for standards covering all topics. Whereas here, this recommendation will probably dig deeper into some of the topics that are also covered by the Sigma principles. You can see a recommendation on public services, gender equality in public life, public service leadership, integrity, etc. And what is important is that every time we work with a partner country or member country, we try to really base our work on the recommendation in the selected field. So there is indeed a very strong interplay between the reforms that governments are trying to make and, on the other hand, the recommendation that we collectively agree and can really lay a foundation for these reforms. These recommendations, and I'd like to say, are not only the OECD one, they are called OECD recommendation because they are convened and prepared by the OECD, but they are really recommendations that are the member country recommendation that includes the EU. So I'd like also to stress that there is really a common values, common principles, common standards between the OECD and the European Union, as also Gregor underlined. If you can go to the next slide, I'd like maybe to show you something that is a bit probably more detailed. So next slide, please. Which is an example, because recommendation can be a bit theoretical. Here I'd like to show you a specific recommendation, and I chose the recommendation on public services. Recommendations typically are discussed and agreed with member countries. Members of the OECD are all EU member states, or almost all EU member states, some of them being still in accession, but also North American countries, also Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, etc. This recommendation looks at setting standards in the area of public services. So what are good, reliable, and trusted public services, and how should countries develop them? The recommendation looks at 4 pillars. Is there a strategic vision and values in the country for public services? Do you have a strategy? Second, what are the core foundations? Do you have a legal framework? Do you have standards for public services? Are there the skills in the public administration, the digital infrastructure? It looks also, third pillar, at are these services accessible and seamless? So the delivery channels. I know in Ukraine you have DIA, which is really a very effective platform for service delivery. You also have one-stop shops for public services delivery. This is the type of things that this pillar looks at. And the fourth pillar is around measurement and engagement. How do you measure the satisfaction of users, their feedback, and how do you use this feedback into design? That's again an example of recommendation. All recommendations are legal instruments that are available online. So feel free to have a look at that. I'll move now to based on these standards, the OECD not only set them, but also try to analyze where countries stand and to support them in implementing those standards. So if you can go to the next slide. There is already one tool that we have that is called Governance at a Glance. And that is an international benchmark based on data and standards across all OECD member and non-member countries. Well, not all non-member, but at least the partner countries. And we provide international comparable data on these standards, where countries stand on budget practices, where do they stand on HR practices, and a lot of other topics. There is an international edition called the OECD edition, and there are regional editions. So that gives you an horizontal view. Then we also have country reviews, where we try to apply and compare the country against the standards. And you can go to the next slide. And maybe the next, so that we save a bit of time. One of these reviews is called the Public Governance Review. And it's a 360 diagnosis of public governance system. Again, comparing the different areas of public governance to the OECD standards. There is actually one ongoing in Ukraine. That's the first time we do it with Ukraine. And this review tries to bring the public administration to the next level, reinforce democratic governance system, and align with international standards. We use the different framework and standards that I mentioned earlier, but we apply them and try to again assess Ukraine's situation against these standards in a number of fields. And that will provide analysis, benchmarking, case studies, and tailored recommendation to Ukraine. Next slide. Sorry, previous one. So Mr. Yarema, of course, knows this review by heart because he's supervising it personally. But it looks at different chapters. I will not go into the details of them, but just to show you examples of topics that we're analyzing with the standards. Strategic planning, information integrity, so mis and disinformation, civic participation, civil service reform, AI. There are a number of other areas. We could not explore everything in one time, but this gives you an example on how we apply it practically. And my final slide will be around the fact that this is an example of a review, but there are, as I said, a lot of standards on public governance that the OECD is working on. And we can deliver like specific work and reviews against each of the standards. So we also have country work on trust survey, on open government, digital, integrity, public procurement, monitoring and evaluation, etc., etc. So I'll just wrap up by saying again, good governance standards are really at the heart of OECD work. We are not only happy to help establish them at the international level, but also to help countries get closer to these standards and to apply them in a practical manner into their public administration. And as you can see, there are many different areas, so I would definitely encourage you as students and researchers to invest also time in your career into different fields, into public administration that is always evolving, never boring in my experience, and where you will always find the right policy areas that will be of interest to you. So thank you again for hosting today, and I will stop my intervention here.
Дякуємо вам, пане Прете,
Thank you, Mr. Prete, for a great presentation, one of the four today's presentations, and for great timing. So we see that there is a lot of work and a lot of recommendation from OECD to Ukraine. And I give the floor to Igor Kareushko, Chairman of the Board of the Center of Policy and Legal Reform, to highlight some ideas that lie in the basis of this forum. Thank you. I will have my speech later, so I will be brief now for my introduction. First of all, I would like to say that exactly 30 years ago, I, by chance, was given the task in 1995 when I was the member of parliament to analyze the law on the cabinet of ministers, which was offered by the government, and present my results on the government meeting. And since that time, I'm working for 30 years and trying to figure out what is wrong and right in laws on cabinets of ministers in Ukraine and abroad. And my efforts and colleagues' efforts were aimed at implementing reforms in Ukraine, which would allow our government, our authorities to be effective, facilitating development of our country. And of course, on that path, we also always paid attention to education, specialists' preparation. So that's why I express my gratitude to initiator of today's meeting, Andriy Zabolotny. It was his idea, which we all supported, and he applied a lot of efforts to organize it. And well, I'm listening to today's speeches and thinking about the possible case for students, like this organization of this event, and it shows the initiative from civil society, the experience sharing from public service, academic approach, and so on and so forth. So we all can learn something from this, and there will be progress in public service as well. And also I express my gratitude to all partners who joined this event, and I will speak in more detail in my speech later. Thank you. Thank you, Igor Borisovich, for good words. And we are moving on. We have three presentations from OECD, Sigma program, and CPLR. And the floor is given to Alana Baker, Public Government Directorate Representative, Head of Global Network of Schools of Government. And welcome to Kyiv, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I apologize that I'm going to have to talk to you through interpretation. I am from the English-speaking part of Canada, which means I'm very useless at every other language. So thank you to the interpreters for helping us out today. And thanks very much for having me here. I'm really honored to talk to you. And thanks to the organizers. I know it's a lot of work, but it's a really valuable event to have us at. I don't know if I switch the slides or do I ask you? Okay, it's up to you. So I have been asked to talk to you today about a bit of the work that I do in my work stream that covers public employment and the management of the civil service, as well as a network that I run that's called the Network of Schools of Government at the OECD. Next slide, please. This I won't spend too much time on because my colleagues have already done a great job explaining the OECD, but just to explain where I sit in the organization, because it is quite a large organization. There is a directorate for public governance, which you've just heard Arnaud tell you a lot about. Within that, there's Sigma also, which is sort of half in the OECD, half in the EU, a very unique organization. There's a division within Gov, the Public Governance Directorate, called Public Management and Budgeting, and then a work stream that works on public employment and management. If you hear me say PEM, I know there are a lot of acronyms at the OECD. That's what we're referring to. So that is where I exist and where my team works at the OECD. Next slide, please. We have a recommendation. You've just heard Arno explain a lot about the different recommendations that govern the work of everybody at the OECD. Ours is called the PSLC, another acronym. It stands for Public Service Leadership and Capability. And these recommendations are developed with OECD member countries, but also accession countries and other stakeholders. And they basically govern what countries agree to do and implement in terms of the principles of our recommendation. So ours particularly has these 3 pillars and 14 principles on what we believe a public service should look like in a country. Those are values-driven culture and leadership, a skilled and effective public service, and responsive and adaptive employment systems. Next slide, please. Within our work stream, I wear another hat, which is that I also lead the OECD's network of schools of government, which is a rapidly growing network. You can see the picture of us there from 2 weeks ago at our most recent annual meeting, which was held in Florence at the European University Institute. The network is hosted by a different member country every year. And so we move around the world because it is not just an OECD country network, it's actually global. So this year was in Florence, the year before was in Dubai, before that was in Rome, but we've had it in Brazil, South Korea, Athens, etc. Only 1 year was it actually held in Paris during COVID, where the OECD actually is. We also have annual webinars, some ad hoc work as well. For instance, this year we held a survey on green skills that was in conjunction with Canada's Environment Ministry. So the scope of our work can be quite large, and it's a rapidly growing network. Right now we have, I think, over 170 member institutions. They are normally the National School of Government, but more and more there's also institutions that are universities or separate training institutes whose primary focus is on training the leaders and the civil servants that end up in public administrations. Next slide, please. Just to give you a bit of an example, and maybe you get the slides after that, for our annual meetings, a bit about how they go. So this is the agenda that was held just 2 weeks ago when we had our meeting in Florence. We had Manuel Barroso was our keynote speaker. He is the former president of the European Commission and former prime minister of Portugal, and a lot of other member institutes that share their expertise and what they're doing, maybe most importantly, what they're doing in their institutes around specific topics. The theme this year was shaping the future in times of turbulence. I think when we decided on that theme, we didn't quite realize how accurate it was going to be as the year shaped out, with a lot of geopolitical turmoil and turbulence, and schools of government trying to figure out how to navigate this when they're training leaders, when they're training civil servants, and when they're working on their own values and their own place in the world and administrations going forward. Next slide, please. We also have in my work stream, because like I said, the running of the NSG, another acronym, is one of the hats that I wear, but me and my team also work more broadly on everything to do with the civil service. And we call this, again, the PEM. So we have a working party, which is one of many under the PGC, another acronym, the Public Governance Committee, which Gregor had also told us about. Our working party, basically we host a roundtable every year in Paris where the heads of the civil service from all of OECD countries gather and talk about the issues that are most relevant, most pertinent going forward. There's also here ad hoc webinars throughout the year, and many delegates that also participate in the PGC. We update our own program of work with at these meetings, and it's constantly updated, and it also reflects into the recommendation that I told you about that governs our work. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a bit more about that meeting. So this was the one that was held last year, and sort of the topics that were discussed. So what has changed over the last 5 years in the public service, envisioning the next 10 years, and how to align people, structure, processes, and technology to cope. And these conversations are really interesting because we normally have participation at the highest levels of the civil service, who sometimes have quite differing views about what the next 10 years should look like. And that is then reflected sort of as a negotiation in our work. It's quite interesting for us to be in the room with these. Next slide, please. As part of this work stream, We do also publish quite a lot of our work, but we also work closely with countries to help with their challenges. So these are some of the publicly available reports that you can find, but there is more online. All of the OECD's reports from last year are available for free and online if you go to the OECD iLibrary. We put out a biannual publication called, again, PEM, Public Employment and Management. There will be another one coming out this year because it was in 2021, 2023, there will be 2025. In the years we don't publish, we're running surveys, and that data is then reflected into these reports. But we also publish a lot of our country work. One you can see here on the attractiveness of the public service in France that's available online. We also do PSLC reviews. So we just finished one of Thailand. The one on Brazil is publicly available online, and we're moving forward with doing these for a lot of other countries as well. So if they interest you, they're available online. Next slide, please. But a lot of our work, like I mentioned, is within countries and administrations. So we will have support from, sometimes it's the EU and sometimes it's from other support organizations. And we do much more specific work with countries, and that does not always end up published online. But if there are things that are interesting, you can still contact me. This is just to give you a scope of the work that we do across OECD countries, but also beyond. In Ukraine and in this region, there's also overlap with the work of Sigma. So we try to align because we both sort of have mandates to cover a lot of this work. But so we have the NSG and the PEM, which I already talked to you about. The PGR is actually the reason that I'm here. Arno just told you about that. There's a chapter in that on the public service, which I'm authoring. But the scope of the work from my team is quite expansive. So learning and development, a lot of the performance management in the public service and workforce planning, attraction, leadership in the political interface is a really growing body of work. And we put out a lot on data and surveys as well. So I won't try to summarize all of it, but so you get an idea of the sort of work that I'm doing and that my team is doing, and it's available at the OECD. Hopefully this is a good summary. Thank you.
Дякую. Дуже дякую вам ще раз за особисту
Thank you for your in-person participation and for great presentation. We noticed people making photos of slides, and there is a link to OECD library, and I hope there will be lots of visitors there after today's event, and after the end of the word they'll come to visit you in person. And I give the floor to Mr. Martin Skrivenis, Senior Policy Advisor, Sigma Program and Regional Manager, Eastern Region, European Neighborhood Policy. He is working with us for many years, and his help allowed us to organize this forum. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrei. Welcome, dear colleagues. It's a great honor for me to be together with you in the walls of Kyiv-Mohyla Academy. As you can see, my Ukrainian language is not very good, so I will continue in English because it's pretty hard for me to talk about professional contents in Ukrainian just yet. I apologize. I'm learning, and I will keep learning.
Sorry for that. But really, I want to thank, first of all, and honestly, Andrei, for pulling all of this event together, for making sure that we can be here with Alana, with Gregor, and with Arno to reach to an audience that we are not typically working on, because we are working close hand in hand with the government institutions on a daily basis, with the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers, with Verkhovna Rada, Ministry of Justice, Ministry of Finance, and we even deliver trainings to the civil servants as such. And for example, in small advertising, This Friday, there will be a training on part of the principles of public administration devoted to service delivery and digitalization at the premises of the National Agency for Civil Service. However, we are not so exposed to the academic framework. So when Andrei said, Martins, I have this idea, would you consider, please? I said, Andrei, excellent idea, let's do it. So really a big honor to address here offline and online the people from academia. I will try to be a little bit less theoretical and a little bit more practical, because you already heard all of the history of Sigma, of what we do, etc. I will try to show you that we are humans just like you, and how we work, and especially on what kind of information we produce, so that you, from the academic point of view, can either yourselves or together with the students find maybe mistakes in what we do. That can also happen. Or maybe you can actually take our work further and come up with the ideas on how we can further improve it and do it jointly. So I look at this event as a possibility for generating new ideas for some innovative projects that we could definitely pull off together. And Andrei, if you could give me the clicker, please. Sorry. Дякую. Так. Так. Дякую. This, so that, first of all, to show that we are really humans, we are not just international civil servants sitting somewhere in Paris and not really understanding what's happening on the ground. We do understand. I'm not the only one who works in and with Ukraine. There is a bunch of colleagues who are structured according our areas of principles of public administration. I happen to cover the area of strategy and policy development. And I also happen to be the key Sigma person in Ukraine coordinating the work of other people. So if there are any questions, any ideas, any proposals, you will have my contacts at the last slide. Feel free to reach out to me, and then I will find the solution within our team. But we are also very active across all of the other areas, like civil service and accountability. We are working with National Agency of Civil Service, with Pan Kolushko, with actual laws on sharing with the Ukrainian side what are the different models in the world across the Europe, and how those are actually practically being implemented. The same I can say on service delivery with the Ministry of Digital Transformation. And actually, I should mention what was not mentioned or pulled out by Arnaud, when he was presenting the recommendation on service delivery. I very clearly remember the October 2022 and the offline presentation of Mr. Mstislav Banik from Ministry of Digital Transformation at the OECD Public Governance Committee, where he was presenting the DIA application and all of the ecosystem of the DIA. And trust me, there was first a dead silence listening on what Ukraine has done in that sense, but also a lot of drive afterwards to work on this, understanding that even we as OECD member countries are not always up to the highest level, that they are also non-members who can, where we can learn from. And in this regard, it's said that Mr. Yarema is already away, but it is the Secretariat of the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine who are coming twice a year to Paris to participate at the Public Governance Committee meetings, and actually feeding into this discussion, even as a non-member state, feeding into the discussions and sharing the Ukrainian experience on various issues, both good, bad, challenging, but sharing and making sure that Ukraine's views are being broadcasted to a wider set of the OECD member states. If we go further, we do quite a bit of the work in Eastern Partnership, in Western Balkans, all of the countries that would like to join the European Union at some day. I just put in this slide to demonstrate that in regard to Ukraine, it is the most active country in the region, definitely, where we are working with your public institutions across all of the areas of the principles of public administration. All 6 of them. There is an ongoing and very, very rapid, actually, cooperation with the Ukrainian public institutions. Now getting a bit more practical. If there is one takeaway from my today's intervention, then please remember our website, because that's definitely is the place where you can find everything, all of the products that we do that are publicly available. Yeah, because there is quite a bit that we do, I wouldn't say tete-a-tete, but really directly with the beneficiary institutions, providing our opinions on draft laws, regulations, inputs for strategies, inputs for functional reviews, etc. That would never be publicly available due to confidentiality issues, but all of the publicly available information is definitely on our website. And we are very proud that a week ago, actually, we launched a completely new design of it. So you are more than welcome to have a look and actually also provide your ideas on whether it can be further improved. Gregor spoke quite a bit on the principles, and indeed, I would say it, if we would use the business terms, it is the classics, yeah, or our core product that we are promoting, the principles of public administration. They had been translated into a Ukrainian language. Sorry if the translation is maybe not the best one, because even I had spotted 2 mistakes there. But if somebody wants to do a proper improvement of the Ukrainian version of the principles, get in touch with me, and I will be more than happy to work together on that. But even more important is the assessment methodology of the principles themselves, because this is exactly what we are doing when we are assessing the readiness of the countries in terms of the public administration systems to be able to join the EU. Gregor didn't go into the details, and I also do not have time because Andrei is already looking at me and saying, Martins, you have 1 minute left. It is really the backbone of how we are assessing the countries, how we are providing our inputs to the annual monitoring reports of the European Commission, on the screening process, on opening the negotiations, and everything that is linked with the public administration's maturity for joining the European Union. And of course, then this assessment is published as a standalone report. The latest on Ukraine was launched in, it was February, actually, 2024. Here in Kyiv, it was launched by the Secretary General of the OECD, together with the Prime Minister Shmyhal, and all of the ministers, really now feeding into very many different work streams on where Ukraine is trying to improve its public administration system. Spoiler alert, the next assessment will be in 2027, so the Ukrainian public administration has 1.5 years to improve its functioning. I will not go, sorry, due to the time limitations into explaining the interlinkage between the principles and methodology. However, if you click on the link within the website and start digging up the methodology, the most important thing for you to look is the last bit that is called the criteria. It is really the criteria on what you need to meet and how we are assessing the countries. There is quite a bit of a look at the legislative practice, but there is even more in-depth look on how things are implemented in practical terms. For example, we are assessing a sample of sector strategies, a sample of regulatory impact assessments, etc. So to ensure that whatever is written in the law is actually being implemented and doesn't just stay as a paper in the law, which sadly enough is the case in very many countries. We have quite a bit of different reports here in the Eastern Partnership done, but there is even more on Western Balkans. We had applied the most recent version of the methodology last year across all of the 6 Western Balkan countries. And actually, you can go on our data portal and click and get into understanding, compare the countries, get the understanding where they are good at, where they are bad at, but just to demonstrate you the average temperature in the hospital. This is how the Western Balkan public administrations currently look if you compare across the different areas of the principles of public administration. You can see clearly that they are doing more or less okay on public financial management issues, but when it comes to organization accountability and oversight, decent, all the rest is bad. I mean, or not developed enough to make sure that they would meet all of the standards that had been set by the principles and by the assessment methodology. I mean, Alana was speaking quite a bit on public service and human resource management. You see, it is one of the most problematic areas across all of the countries that we see, and we are getting also quite a bit of requests for support also from Ukraine, especially in this area. But Sigma is not only about assessments. We are also producing various other publications, be it salary systems in public administration, be it organizational structure on budget management, administrative judiciaries in the Western Balkans, even intermunicipal cooperation in the Western Balkans. But there is quite a bit also on Eastern Partnership countries. There is a very interesting publication on centers of government that we managed to actually translate into Ukrainian language together with the Center for Policy and Legal Reforms, and so I definitely urge both you and the students to have a look at these publications. They are drawing quite a bit of attention already, Andriy, but I'm sure that after today's meeting, the spike in terms of the downloading of the publications and accessing them will go immensely up. As you see, again, salary systems in public administration had been drawing quite a bit of attention, of almost 10,000 views and downloads just for this one particular publication. Besides proper publications, there are also publications on very specific policy issues. Yeah, we are digging deeper also, for example, in terms of how the parliaments are working with evidence-based lawmaking in the Western Balkans. But again, next year we'll start doing it also in the Eastern Partnership countries. Centers of government, single digital gateway, and so on. So again, you might find something that you are currently working from the academic perspective, some data analysis, yeah, some raw things that might be useful for your academic research. To add to the complexity of what we are doing, we are also producing practical toolkits where we are trying to provide assistance to the countries on how they can practically apply the theoretical models with good, and I'm not using the word best, but good country experiences, so that you would see what needs or how things can be done in practice in different models in different countries. At the same time, we are in no way promoting copy-paste. Copy-paste is the worst possible thing that you can do. Please never do that. And especially here for Ukraine, I had been telling it to the colleagues with whom I work. For Ukraine, especially for the recovery stage, you will have to come up not only meeting all of the requirements of the principles, but actually you need to exceed them. You need to come up with, I don't know, let's call it public administration system 4.0, yeah, where you are ahead of all of the others, because that will be the only way how Ukraine will be able to speed the recovery process, because you will definitely not have the time to gradually move forward as the Western Balkans had been doing for the last 20 years. If you want to ensure that the recovery of the country post-war and even now during the war is proceeding very well. Those of you who use LinkedIn, make sure you sign up and become one of our more than 3,000 followers. That's where we are putting all of the news alerts and new publications on events that we do. So definitely feel free to join us there. I see that I'm even sitting in the middle picture with Ms. Ilyushin and Mr. Wojtowicz and discussing something on the principles of public administration. So definitely make sure that you sign up for the LinkedIn. Last but not least, these are my contact details. These are all of the links that I was mentioning during my speech. If you have crazy good ideas for cooperation, write me. If you want to improve the Ukrainian language of the principles, write me. If you want to just catch up over a coffee while I'm in Kyiv and listen to my rather bad Ukrainian language, definitely let me know. And next time I will be in Kyiv, I will be glad to meet you. Дуже дякую.
Дякуємо вам, Мартин, ще особисто.
Thank you, Martin, for co-organization of the event, which made it possible, and thank you for explaining in simple words the sphere in which you work, and for presenting the team, for presenting Mr. Lech, who works in important spheres and with whom we cooperate. So everybody saw the links to resources, and I believe you will have more visitors and followers. So thank you again. And I have also a hint to get also Instagram and TikTok. And the next presentation is by Ihor Kalushko, Chairman of the Board of the Center of Policy and Legal Reforms. Thank you. While preparing for this event, I get advice from Andriy concerning what should I say here, and he offered to tell about the center, and I prepared the 20 slides presentation. I made two of presentations. Actually, this will be shared, and I will now quickly tell you about the center, about the information, and then we'll speak in more detail about our thoughts about public government and its studies. So, technical problems. So this button. So this slide shows the key milestones in the history of CPLR. The center was registered in 1996. This idea came to my mind when the constitution was adopted and when the parliament had a great need in draft bills preparation. And to organize the work with scientists, we organized our center areas of work. We started with administrative reform and then moved to new and new direction, and new people joined us as of today. As of the start of this year, Center has around 50 experts who permanently work on our projects. 1/3 of them had the PhD or doctorate, diplomas, etc. So the list of our achievements, the key legislation which was either initiated by us or to which we contributed in terms of preparation, advocacy, etc. Of course, not every law from this list is perfect because we prepare drafts and provide proposals. Unfortunately, not all of them are taken into account, so sometimes there are situations where we fight for something for a long time and then have to feel sorry for that. So that's our strategy, our vision. Ukraine is a European state built on the principles of democracy, rule of law, and good governance. And to implement these principles by supporting institutional reforms, we try to organize our activity. So that was the older slide. At the very beginning, the same goal was formed through the strategy of country development formed by us. So the explained development of a country in the following points, and the blue points are what we do to move our country forward. And this slide is from a recent presentation. It's the structure of our organization, 9 structural units who work in these spheres for recent years. And again, that's our explanation of citizens' influence, self-organization, and the work of them. And that's how we see our center in the system of cooperation with others. So we always explained that we work in the triangle between civil society, academia, and government. We understand what society needs, we analyze it with scientific methods, and bring these ideas to central government bodies. So the tasks of our analytical center are explained here. We emphasize the society development, the need to help political parties and public government in creating high-quality public policy. Overall, we understand that society delegates to the state 12 policies. In each of them, society has some interest, and lots of our problems start when not everyone in government understands which policy, which social interest they implement in their office. They know some technical things, but when you ask them what social interests do you realize, implement, what do you give to society, there is often a long pause in response, and not always we get answers. But that's important things, and we should think about them. So this is our understanding of the cycle of state policy formation, that the cycle of our work in our our attempts to tell somebody something is also based on this logic. These are the competencies required in think tanks and ministry directorates. That's the result of our long many years of experience and different attempts and approaches to research organization, and that's the summary of 9 competencies which are critical in any think tank, in any directorate of ministry, and the full representation of these competences leads to effective work. This slide shows our evaluation in CPLR. That's an interesting topic. Where should we place emphasis? Which qualities are important? That's very interesting, and I could have thought a lot about various situations when former statesmen came to us to participate in our job, or people who combine work in Donetsk or Luhansk Oblast, state public service at the same time. So we had a lot of interesting experience. So this approach is working all the time, and it proves effective. And now about priorities of public management. Many years ago, I started this discussion in terms of changing Soviet approaches. So that's, I believe, I hope that that approach is outdated, but I still left it on the slide. I believe it's important to learn and teach what we have today, but what should we have in future, and especially in terms of our future EU membership. If we do not pay enough attention to that in educational process, if we simply study what we have today, it means that we do not support future development, and all our education should be aimed at country's development. Every step, every action should be aimed at growth. And I believe the main thing which our graduates should have is coming to their public job with a new vision, not simply ask what should we do, what predecessors did. They should have their own vision and push their own vision. So that's how we will get results and effect. It's important to pay attention to coordination between civil society, local self-government, and state. In our practice, we often see that there is no understanding of this continuity and unity of social organism, what self-government does, what civil society does, how they should cooperate. And we also lack deep understanding of principles, like principles of the rule of law. It's very hard because only lawyers know about that, but legislation is applied not only by lawyers, and applying law without not understanding its principles leads to mistakes. So analysis of policy making is also very important. We pay attention to that, and I know that in many universities it's important topic. Lots of lectures are dedicated to that, but I believe that if we analyze how is it taught in various universities, we would be able to find room for improvement. Also, the role of parliament and government in this process is also urgent question. We hear questions like, is it right that Sigma asks the government to participate in laws preparation in legislative work? So we would like to have graduates who understand these processes and believe that that's right. And also there are a lot of books which we read recently which inspire thoughts. Like here I give the example of state capacity building. I believe that's the best textbook for reformers. If we focus on the ways of preparation and implementation of reforms, that's the best approach. And also we should pay attention to management culture and its role in public government. I believe that this issue is underestimated in our public service, like the behavior of many officials with their workers, how they organize their work, and it often leads to inefficiency and discontent, like both of leaders and workers. So it also should be taught. We have this popular book, and especially the parts on the culture. I believe the culture is important. So the publications, we have in our center more than 50 publications. We counted that several years ago, and it was 50, and after that I don't know. And of course, not all of these publications deal with public government, and it would be also interesting for various listeners or researchers to look on the preparation of various reforms in our country, because we usually publish books. After that, we have publications about police, prosecutor's office, courts, etc. We describe the foreign experience and recommendations for Ukraine. So it's thunder, I believe. Okay, so here are our experts working in the sphere of public management, and I guess that we have as many people working in the local self-government spheres. Like Yanina is the Doctor of Sciences in public management, but she works with local self-government currently. And the last slides illustrate like that's the slide from our last strategic session, when we answered the questions on the role of think tank during war times, where should our attention should be focused, etc. Yesterday I found that report, looked through it again, and some points were strengthened over the years, but not all, and we will discuss it later. And the last slide describes our dreams after victory. We reviewed the idea of social contract. Previously, we treated that as abstraction, which is implemented in the constitution, but this drastic changes caused by war and victory in the war can be the point when society could start the discussion on social contract again. And some document can be written for that, some list of principles and goals, and it would be great to focus the approaches to this question. What is the society? Which are our goals? What do we want from government? And we work on that. We have the concept of new governance, including constitutional reform. We constantly work on that, and we are going to update our documents. And if possible, we would be glad to participate in update and codifying the key laws, and also to conduct educational activities on law and public administration if possible. So thank you for your attention, and you have our contacts on the last slide. Thank you. So you managed time perfectly with your presentation, and you demonstrated the work of this very important think tank, because over the years, your work and your team proven to be worthy to study and to pay attention to, and that's great that it was created. And we have a couple of minutes till the end, and we have two speeches. We have Mr. Alexander Sayenko, co-head of the Direction Governance. Well, we're going to start the discussion. Good afternoon, colleagues. I wanted to say that I work with reforms since 2005, but Igor started his work in 1995. So I'm glad to see the colleagues, the Martins and OECD colleagues. I worked in the coordination council with work on OECD, so I'm glad to see the colleagues. So coming back to today's topic, education, public service, etc. I actually represent business in negotiating team with EU, and I would like to cover this topic in terms of supply and demand. So we'll start with demand. You had mentioned the book on public administration, and I'm currently working on thesis on that, and I'm studying what's going on in the world in terms of public management. And actually, people are moving faster. Like we can mention Azerbaijan colleagues, they are moving forward with great speed. There is a huge political request for professionals in government, and that's very important. And we should create demand for that, and we should have people in the public service who want to get that knowledge. The system should show people that you need that knowledge for career advancement. You will be able to get better results, etc. The system should create this demand, because without such demand, we won't be able to create supply. And the second question is actually supply. We didn't study that in detail in terms of education, but as a public servant in the past, I believe that there is, well, some distance, there is lack of synergy between education and our practical needs. I believe we should, well, communicate with universities and decide what can can we do to adapt that system to practice? I believe that it's over-regulated. There are a lot of formal approaches like curricula, programs, and system cannot adapt quickly.
Колись ми, наприклад, я вивчав школу Льоль в Парижі, мовно кажучи, у них там приймається закон базовий.
At one point, I studied at the Paris school, and they are like when they're adopting a new budget code, and the whole protocol of the civil service is learning for a month. What is this law? How to implement it? So the system is very agile and adjustable, and adjusts to new changes. And I think this flexibility is something we're lacking. And as to supply and demand is, I think, something we can balance, and we need to balance. When we are discussing this in the Center of Political and Legal Reforms, we are discussing that we need to step away from the absence of competitions, and we need to have career civil service where a person would be protected from the standpoint of illicit actions, and they will be able to promote themselves in the civil service. Then we will be able to establish the demand for civil service and for quality civil service. And colleagues mentioned a lot about the need for quality training and education. We're always limited in resources, but we need to, make it happen. So investment in people is the best investment. By the way, Martin, I saw your slide about gender equality. Men only, right? You're improving your Ukrainian, but compare with our CPPR slide. Okay, thank you. Thanks very much. Andrei, superb. Umbrellas, timing, organizational, that, yeah, perfect, Andrei. Yes, thank you. Cool. Really cool. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you for your presentation. Thank you for important emphasis. I think that's how it's going to be. Taras? Last word. And the conversation is yours. We literally have 1 minute. Maybe we have another question from the deans. And Taras Shevchenko, Director of Center of Rule of Law. Welcome, everyone. Greetings. Thank you very much for the invitation to this extremely important event. I will try to be very brief as well. Alexander went into history of the 90s and the zeros, and I'd like to continue the story that Mr. Kalushka started. In the years that Mr. Kalushka was creating centers and was writing laws, I was nearby in the corridors. I was studying law in Shevchenko University since 1994, and my first employer was Mr. Kalushka's colleague, Mr. Roman Besmertny, a member of parliament, and I helped write the constitution together with them, legislation on local governance. And so my first job was essentially in the civil service. And then I worked a lot in the international organizations and NGOs until I came back into public administration and took the position in 2020 of the Deputy Minister of Culture and Information Policy for European integration. And I kept that position until October last year. I'm also now in the Democracy of the Rule of Law, an organization I founded in 2005 and led for 15 years. On the return from the ministry, the public administration reform has become even more important. I was a representative of the civil society before, and I remember that the Forum of Reforms in Denmark, I spoke from the panel, and I tried to present a point which I didn't think was so close to the minds of the audience, but I still am prepared to support it. My point was about comparing anti-corruption and public administration and good governance. And it was based on the fact that, in my opinion, this is
майже одне і те ж саме, але з різної точки зору.
Almost the same, but from different points. It's like glass half full or half empty.
З точки зору належного врядування
But the approach from the standpoint of good governance is much more important, but unfortunately a lot less popular. Attracts a lot less attention than anti-corruption matters. And it's important that it's not just important that people don't take bribes, but most importantly is the public services that the citizens are obtaining, are receiving. The way the courts are making decisions, not just that they are not corrupt, but whether or not the citizen can obtain quality legal education. As to your work at schools and at universities, in the teaching field, I think it's mega important for children. Values, approaches, principles, philosophy, and understanding. And this step away from positivistic approach, it's very important to understand why. Part of our terminology has changed, but part of it has not. And the civil service, I don't think, is a very good narrative, because we can often hear, I am the civil servant, I serve the state. And serving the state is serving the minister and the chief. And I've been working in the media field reform for many years as a lawyer. And we've been promoting the reform that is called Суспільне, public broadcasting. And that's the same public broadcaster, which has become societal, суспільне. And maybe that would look much better, that would sound much better, and would give much better narrative to the persons who are coming to serve not the country, but the society. And so at the end, I would like to thank all of you working in this field. You're doing great and very important work. And you keep doing a very important work. And learning to understand policies, yet another term that is not perceived very well in Ukraine, because it sounds like policy means something totally different. And a lot more people are coming in who understand what is policy. And lots of efforts are required to make sure that in this field we walk hand in hand with the European Union to become a successful state. Thank you. Thank you, Taras. Thank you for very interesting points. Thank you for very interesting proposals. And this conceptual basis is present, and I know that our international partners and our friends are planning another event, but I can see that the rain may hold them back. So we have a chance to ask and to invite the deans and the rectors of higher educational institutions who are present here online and offline, maybe a couple of questions, and we will make a summary. Thank you.
Прошу бажаючих до слова. Так, будь ласка.
Thank you.
Всім доброго. Всім доброго дня. Дійсно, поки дощ і така спокуса потренувати Мартінша в українській мові.
While it's raining and while there's a chance to, give Martin some more Ukrainian language training and to avoid wasting time, there is a very interesting aspect. This week, we will not only celebrate the Day of Children's Protection, but according to the reform, new vision of educational standards will be formed to be introduced next year.
З'являється дуже цікавий не скільки виклик, скільки цікавий предмет для дискусії. Публічне
This is a very interesting subject for discussion.
То, що ми починали сьогодні зі слів good, все, що good, воно тепер знаходиться в одній сфері з бізнесом і з правом.
This business and law and administration And this is one single sector. In your opinion, how do those 14 principles that Alana has presented, the principles that were mentioned in your presentation, how can they effectively integrate into business and into the law? Thank you.
Дякую за запит, але спробую
Thank you for your question.
англійською.
I will try to speak English.
Вибачте. A very good question, actually. And first, while I was thinking through, while you were asking the question, I was thinking, is it a right move or not? Because my first two educations, higher educations, are in political science and they are academic. And we had always been very protective of not getting into the business or law or any other studies. But actually, it might be a very good idea to have it all together as an integrated approach towards building the society, supporting the society and its various groups. So if we look at the principles, they are touching on all of these three pillars that you mentioned, because there is both about good governance as such, at least in the principles of public administration, on how the structuring of the public administration should be, that there should be some accountability, etc. But there is also a part on it where it covers the legal aspects, legal certainty, also possibilities for engaging with courts and all of these systems so that nobody can be higher than the law. And last but not least, it is also about making sure that these first two systems can work, because they cannot work with very limited resources, including not only financial, also human, but to get the human, you need also financial resources. And this is actually quite a tricky thing on how, for Ukraine, knowing how low the civil service salaries had been. And I'm not saying it's a magic stick. Salaries are not the magic stick, but at least it is part of the problem, part of the solution. But if we go back to the principles, it is definitely about service delivery aspects, on how we are delivering towards not only citizens, but most importantly about businesses. For example, it was an interesting trend that we noticed in our work that after the creation of the Doge in United States, a number of countries started creating and recreating the same. In the principles, we had been arguing for the long time that you need to provide digital services, ask for the information only once, that you need to do a proper regulatory impact assessment on the business environment, right? But it has always been like, okay, we are asking the countries, oh, it's difficult, let's not do it. But now we see that the tide is turning a little bit, right? And there is more and more emphasis on the businesses. So I would say it very organically fits. And if you would take all of the at least Sigma 32 principles, it would be quite easy to say that, look, these aspects are purely from the law, or I would add also policy strategy side of the things. These are coming for the governance issues, governance as institution, as systems, procedures, and then there is also business. I would definitely also add that, at least in our case, there is quite a bit of attention towards the citizens. Not citizens that are not business, but they are still need to be taken into account. So I would actually add to your question the business and citizens.
Дякую вам за запитання, по-перше.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for the question. I'm sure many people, many educators were interested in this, and after this reform, it was subject to numerous discussions. So I'd like to ask to thank Mr. Priminch, who gave a broad overview on this and gave his view on the scope of this innovation in parallels with the European realities. Thanks. Well, the sun is shining now, so not so much a question. I'd like to thank you for the event. And as to education, what I liked best is when Igor said that education must work towards the future, for the benefit of the future. But in reality, education will always be lagging behind by its nature. Why? Let's take an educational program, for example, baccalaureate program. Baccalaureate program lasts for 4 years. So when the baccalaureate program is developed, the educational group has to design what happens in 4 years' time at the labor market and what competencies will be needed in the labor market. That's one. Secondly, there are public standards. Master's program, 5 years, baccalaureate program, a bit less. I'd like to ask that person the question, if we go back to philology. I would like to thank the colleague for the relevant question. The business, management, and law. And there is public administration and management in Ukrainian, but the question is this: why next to public administration there's an English-speaking version, management and administration, and why next to the management it's management and administration? Thank you.
Я, якщо можна, з цього приводу просто своє враження добавлю.
I'll just add my impression to this.
Боремося.
For many years, we've been struggling. Before that, we were struggling with the academy under the president about terminology, about translations of concepts. And this struggle is ongoing. But the problem has become a lot more complicated. It's not just somebody misunderstanding something. I recently asked Martin,
Principles of public administration, а не public governance.
Principles of public administration and why not public governance? I have a feeling that it should be public governance. And surprisingly, he agreed. But that's how it was once upon a time. By someone. I will not repeat who was saying that. And we're sticking to that. And that's where all of our problems come from. But the worst part is that we are still sitting in the Soviet Union and we're translating this governance and administration in the same way, as in the same word. At the same time, you're saying, well, the reverse translation is management.
Ще я пам'ятаю приблизно років 20 тому десь світлої пам'яті.
I also remember about 20 years ago, Professor Averyanov said very convincingly in his presentations that governance is a very narrow field.
Своїми підлеглими. І це фактично
керівництво,
управління – це синоніми.
Governance are synonyms. When we're talking about state system, we should, talking about public governance is continuing the Soviet approach that the state is managing the society. But theoretically, we've moved away from this somehow. And we still have the strategy of public governance reforms. And will the next iteration of the strategy be called properly or not?
So we have a lot to speak about. Thank you. Thank you, Igor. Thanks to deans and heads of departments. And we actually have a lot of other participants, students, and we will allow ourselves to not let students to have a word because of lack of time. And so we have one more final question. So is it on? Thank you. We have to take into account that public administration term was used as a historic term, which is important, same like державне управління in Ukrainian was used historically. And when we dig deeper in that topics, we sometimes use other terms. It's like styles and classifications of public administration by Weber, and also there is term good governance, public management, and they coexist. And when the schools are called public administration, it doesn't mean that they teach policy or government. It's just an umbrella term. Thank you for your attention. Thank you. And to finish, the Donetsk National University, named after Vasil Stus, thank you for your invitation, and I thank speakers for interesting presentations, and we saw them in person, which is very important in today's conditions. That's a great advantage. And I have a question. We live in the paradigm shift times in public administration, and there are changes of civil servant or public servant culture. And I believe that such combination of today's guests, speakers, representatives of think tanks, state representatives, civil servants, scientists, lecturers from education sphere, only in such combination we will be able to prepare a good civil servant who will actually fulfill all that tasks which stand before our state in conditions of turbulence and post-war recovery. So I have a question from all of us, because we are people who depend on standards, different moments which limit us. So how do you see the continuation of communication between representatives of education and you as representatives of think tanks and civil service? Because that's important for us. We are now discussing our educational programs, and we are working by ourselves, but we try to invite think tanks, civil servants to help us improve these programs. So how do you see the future communication? Thank you, Elena. Actually, I will summarize our event with this question. So, of course, the aim of this event, as you correctly mentioned, was communication, because at the website of Ministry of Education and Science, we have 116 establishments of higher education which prepare specialists in this sphere. So how can all stakeholders cooperate in this sphere? That's maybe this event was first one or among the first which united so many representatives of education, and communication on educational programs is possible. The deans of departments mentioned some problematic issues, the lack of communication. So that's the question of policy making, in which think tanks also participate. Here we also should remember the triangle of Iniver's presentation. So what have we heard today? Which advice? Well, I noted in my notes that it was recommended to prepare specialists with emphasis on practice. These representatives of government tell us that, and maybe they will employ such graduates and help them start their career path, to change some current practices where graduates of certain universities work in certain bodies. Also, we should expand internship possibilities for students, because the law on civil service, which was adopted more than 10 years ago. So according to this law, any state body should be open for use for internship, and it should be easily accessible. Third point, we are waiting for the selection processes. We were invited to try. We see this hiring on various job portals, but we actually do not understand which competencies and knowledge are needed. We don't know that exactly right now. What with competition process, we will have a transparent system. So that's about this triangle from the presentation, and what should we understand about that. The next question was dealing with civil society, new vision, development of students' initiatives. So we should demonstrate with our activities that we are ready to be proactive, ready to take responsibility. There is demand for such specialists, and we must show to students all these resources of OECD, to show students resources of think tanks. And one more point, summarizing, we saw many presentations, many links to social networks, and I advise students to subscribe to these resources and networks like OECD site with analytics, with news. It could be used for the preparation, even for lectures in university. So you can subscribe to these resources and be ready for some classes in public government. Next point, artificial intelligence. We are reaching this stage, and so we see that it is used sometimes. And the next answer to your question, what do we do next? That's communication between institutions and universities. We have our contact details, which you can use for communicating with us using that email. And final words, we should encourage not only students but also lecturers. So we, together with Kyiv-Mohyla Academy, thought that this forum should be well finalized with certificates of participation, and we wish you a quiet day. And the sounds of thunder that we heard, let it be the only sound which you hear, and we look forward to peace and stopping hearing sounds of rockets. Thank you all. Glory to Ukraine.